In this daily drop, I'm going to talk about some of the comments and reactions to the last couple of videos I made about my on-location shoot. So let's go. All right, everybody, I'm back in the barn from my 3-day production, and there's been some great comments and reactions and some questions about that particular shoot. And I do have a couple of additional episodes about that, but I thought that for today, to end off the week, I would address some of those questions and some of those comments in this episode. So what I'm referring to is the high key kind of blown out background shoot that I did this week locally for a school. And before I get into the audio stuff, let me just talk a little bit about picture. I did have one comment from, well, I had a number of comments. Some people really liking that look, another DP doc person saying they would never choose that location. And it's not an easy space to shoot in, and we will be shooting in that space again in a few weeks, but in a completely different direction, and we will be flagging and blocking a lot of that exterior light out of that space. But the client definitely wanted to go with a different look. They didn't want to do the picture window looking outside again. And the reality is that when I do these shoots, I'm basically doing the entire pre-light and the setup myself. I usually have help from one other person from the school. And when it comes to the actual production days, it's me and the producer slash interviewer, and that's basically who's in the space most of the time, except for people who are getting the quote-unquote talent or the interviewees into the space. So I embraced it. I said, let's go for that. There was another comment about the catch light. And the thing about the episode is, or episodes that I've done, is I'm looking directly to a camera. But in the actual interviews, they're looking off camera. And so there's definitely a catch light that exists. And it was definitely reading on camera for all of the interviews. And that was a question from Brandon who wanted to know about that. But yeah, the high key kind of, or more sort of blown out background look isn't my favorite all of the time. But I thought, you know, let's dress this space up a little bit. Let's see what it looks like. But we did shoot log. We have some room there in terms of the background. I did make adjustments after those episodes were shot in terms of ISO and then bringing the light levels up where talent was. So there's a little bit more detail there, but it's definitely a blown out background. So there's that stuff. Audio. So I talked a little bit about this onstage bar here, which is about 16 inches wide in total, and my original one from Newer was much smaller, was about 6, maybe 7 inches wide, so considerably wider in terms of separation here. And then this is the ball mount, so when this is attached to the boom stand, I have a tremendous amount of control in terms of where this can be positioned overall. Generally booming from the non-key side, so coming in from that side so we're not getting weird reflections. And the two microphones, when we have two people on camera, and I really had two of these NTG5s, not one of these and one of these, when they're sitting next to each other, they're not this much further apart from each other in terms of microphone placement. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the other thing to acknowledge is that these two mics are going to separate channels in the MixPre 6.2, and they are dialogue only, and I am not mixing those two mics together. So generally getting one person speaking or another person speaking pointed directly down to that particular person or talent. And as a result, I don't and haven't had any real phase issues where you basically have the two microphones out of sync, and then when you are using them together, you're mixing them, you can have phase issues where you basically are canceling out some of the audio, you're losing clarity, stuff like that. I'm not a sound recordist, I'm not a sound expert, but used in this particular way, I'm not having an issue. Of course, if I was trying to mix these two microphones together, then I might have an issue. And I've, had two mics before when talent might be moving left or right. We're still favoring one mic or the other in that situation. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm not trying to use those two sources together and mix them together. So it's just dialogue, and I don't think there's going to be an issue there. Now, that said, there is a formula that I've read about, which is a 3-to-1 formula. Let's say two people and they're a foot away from the microphones, then the microphones themselves should be 3 feet away, like a 3-to-1 or 1-to-3 ratio. And I don't have a 3-foot bar, and talent isn't necessarily going to be 3 feet apart from each other, or like a meter apart. But one thing I have done to have a little bit more flexibility, because I have found that when I have two people in the frame, that they do have to be quite close, and there will be situations where people are further away. I have ordered a new bar, considerably more expensive, 3 times the cost, and I had to go to AliExpress for it to be 3 times the cost instead of 5 times the cost, that only takes 2 microphones, and it's a full 2 feet wide. So I'm going to get another about 8 inches of width on that, and I think that's going to be my go-to microphone bar that I'm going to use. And it's adjustable, so if I want to have it closer or further away, I can, but it's just going to give me a lot more flexibility in terms of where I can position those 2 microphones. So hopefully Curtis, Judd, and Sound Speeds, it's Alan over there, won't give me too hard of a time on this. I'm getting clean recordings, and that's what's important. And the other thing that I'm considering doing is taking the MixPre 6.2, and originally that device would only allow you to add the noise assist plugin to one channel. You could get a license for that. It's expensive, $300, and apply it to one of the channels that you're recording to. Well, they did a firmware update, and now I can do that with 2 channels. I have to buy a separate plugin license for that second channel. But if I do wind up doing that, then I'll do a video talking about why. But the reality of why is if I'm in the same space and I have 2 people and I'm recording 2 mics to 2 channels and I'm using noise assist on one of those channels, I probably want to use it on another. You can turn it off. You can dial it up as much or as little as you want. I tend to be sort of in that -3 to -6 decibel range when it comes to the application of that. I don't even know if it's considered -6, but it's a 3 to 6 dB noise assist. And basically it's listening to the environment and then it's lowering that ambient noise, essentially trying to bring the noise floor down so your signal to noise ratio is further apart. I hope that all made sense. I like doing daily stuff because I can actually address these questions and comments, and sometimes I think it's better than just typing answers inside of the comment section. There you go. I'll put some links below in the description. Don't forget to. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.